Greetings and welcome back to Room 303 and our chats with Emily as we're calling our readings through the poetry of Emily Dickinson. We are in the Johnson edition. We turn now to poem 283, a mean to move a queen, that is to say a look or a manner or a certain appearance to move a queen. Now, this is an interesting poem for a number of reasons. Emily, you could make the argument, is writing many of her poems to try to go through the process of self-discovery. Who am I? That notion of the Delphi oracle, know thyself, Emily takes quite seriously. The great scholar Priest has pointed out that this poem provides Emily's balanced self-portrait in verse. Now, I like that word balanced. You'll remember that we've commented already that Emily is very interested in emphasizing certain of her attributes, especially her smallness, her littleness, her fragility. Now, our assumptions are that you've been following our stuff at LearnStrong.net with us, down that left-hand side, Chats with Emily, our playlist. I'm hopeful that you've already worked with our set of introductory comments. I'm hopeful that you've already worked through our preceding 282 poems. We just finished with 282, How Noteless Men and Pleiades. And if you've done the readings of the previous 282 poems, you know that what we're about to play with here, we've seen already. Now, in poem 612, for example, Emily will emphasize her smallness, although we've seen it already in a number of poems. And in poem 528, Emily will emphasize her wealth and her power. Here in this poem, Emily is both small and great at the same time. Now, I think there is a biblical reference that is standing behind this poem, although Emily doesn't come right out and say it. Again, one of the reasons, guys, we call these chats with Emily is it would be a lot of fun to just sit down with Emily and say, hey, in poem 283, were you playing around with the biblical passage from 1 Corinthians 9, 19 through 23? Now, this is a famous passage in which St. Paul makes the argument that he tried to become all things for all people. This is the way he says it. For though I be free from all men, yet I made myself servant unto all, that I might gain the more. And unto the Jews I became a Jew, that I might gain the Jews. To them that are under the law as under the law, that I might gain them that are under the law. To them that are without law as without law, being not without law to God, but under the law to Christ, that I might gain them that are without law. To the weak I became as weak, that I may gain the weak. I am made all things to all men. Verse 22 of this 1 Corinthians 9 passage. I am made all things to all men, that I might by all means save some. And this I do for the gospel's sake, that I might be partaker thereof with you. Now, I think that this is standing behind some of what Emily will play. As she says, I am both A and I am both B. Obviously, Hamlet's to be or not to be speech could also be the source of some of this. A mean to move a queen, half child, half heroine, an Orleans in the eye that puts its manner by for humbler company when none are near, even a tear its frequent visitor, a bonnet like a duke, and yet a wren's peruke were not so shy of go or by, and hands so slight they would elate, a sprite with merriment, a voice that alters low and on the ear can go like lead of snow, or shift supreme as tone of realm on subject's diadem, too small to fear, too distant to endear, and so men compromise and just revere. Now, there's an argument to be made whether Emily's talking about herself or talking about her poetry. I think it can be read either way. I think it's pretty obvious that Emily is very interested in saying, I am this, I am that, or I am not this, and I am not that. In a few poems later, she'll be talking in 288, I'm nobody, who are you? And there's this notion of who am I? Notice she'll begin with this word mean, that is to say this notion of look or manner, to move a queen. So she says, I have that. She says, I'm also half child, half heroine. By the way, heroine only used this one time in all of her poetry. An Orleans, only one time used as well. That is to say, aristocracy in the eye. that puts its manner by, back to Mien in the opening line, for humbler company. In other words, I can present as Orleans, as this aristocracy, but I can also present as very humble. And when none are near, even a tear, it's frequent visitor. Now, one of the reasons we call this series Chats with Emily is this notion that Emily is offering herself as a visitor to have a conversation. And here she'll say that she can wear a bonnet like a duke. We're back to Orleans, right? And yet a Ren's peruke, that is to say the wig that men would wear of the day, and peruke here only used one time in her poetry, we're not so shy of go or by. She says, sometimes I'm shy, sometimes I'm not. And hands so slight. When we get to poem 486, it was, I was the slightest in the house. The emphasizing of her smallness, her littleness, as we've commented already. She, in 77 poems, uses the word small, and in 172 poems, the word little. And in that regard, she's emphasizing that. And hands so slight, they would elate a sprite to make a spirit happy with merriment. And then she'll get to her voice. Now, of all the things we don't have of Emily's, and there's a lot of it, the one thing we wish we could have is a recording of Emily's voice. You'll remember when we did Talks with Walt, our readings through all the poems of Whitman's deathbed edition of Leaves of Grass. There's only a single poem reading that we have, that reading of his America, that we can hear a little bit of his voice. We would love to hear Emily's voice. She says her voice alters. She says it's low. And on the ear can go like let of snow. This use of the word snow takes us back to poem 275, doesn't it? Or shift supreme as tone of realm on subject's diadem. Now, it's interesting to ask, is she talking about her spoken voice, or is she talking about her poetic voice? It's not clear, obviously. And then she'll say of herself, too small to fear. I can't scare people with my presence. Again, as we said, in 77 poems, she emphasizes with the use of the word small. Too distant to endear. So, like, she doesn't allow herself to get too close. And so, men, and it's interesting she uses the word men here. Is she talking actually males, or is she talking all people? It's not clear. Compromise and just revere. Now, I love that she ends the poem with that word, revere. In other words, you're never going to fully understand me, and this is, I think, the argument of 2a. You're never going to fully understand me, but I'm balanced enough to challenge you to at least revere me. If not the person, certainly the poetry. At 2b, I love the key word of heroine, and I think in many ways that's the game that she's playing here, right? To what degree is she half heroine? I'm heroine enough, in other words. I love the irony of that. At 3a, a couple of scholars have pointed out that you gotta know your Shakespeare and appreciate your Shakespeare when you're reading Emily, because she loved Shakespeare. There is that passage in King Lear, Act 5, Scene 3, lines 274 to 75, where King Lear is describing Cordelia's voice, and he says it this way, quote, her voice was ever soft, gentle, and low, an excellent thing in woman. And it's possible that this use of the word low here may be referencing that. Finally, at 3b, what are your thoughts about yourself? Do you consider yourself a balanced person in that regards? Do you consider yourself worthy of being revered? I'm hopeful that you'll think that of Emily for sure. Thank you.